Joining us live from Capitol Hill are Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington and Republican Congressman Pence of Indiana. Thank you both for joining me.
You bet.
Congressman Pence, I want to start off with you because obviously there's a lot of concern that if any of this is going to be accomplished, the president has laid out, it will take a bipartisan spirit with members of Congress. On that list of things, what do you believe is just unrealistic as a promise to come true on behalf of the president?
Is that to me, Cameron?
Yes,
or to
yes. I'm sorry, Congressman Pence. I want to start with you.
Thank you.
Which are you most doubtful of on those list of things?
I think the issue is not what the Democrat majority and the administration would be able to enact. They have the votes. They can spend the dollars, but it's what can they actually do, and also embrace what I think is the president's very admirable call for fiscal discipline and fiscal restraint. That just today we passed a massive omnibus spending bill with some 9,000 earmarks. About 2 weeks ago, we passed a nearly $1 trillion stimulus bill. And as we add to the national debt and have $1 trillion deficits ahead of us, it's really hard to see how the administration or the congressional Democrats can square a desire to reduce the deficit and expand the government's role in health care and education and energy.
Well, Congressman Smith, I won't say how do you do it because that's obviously a way too simple question for what is a complex issue that I'm sure all of you ponder the solutions for. But I want to at least break out jobs here. The president said 3.5 million jobs. You've got a new report from the Labor Department saying that more than 235,000 workers were fired in last month's cuts there. On the list of priorities, jobs is job number one, to quote that commercial. After that, what concerns you most of the promises made by the president? Is it health care? Is it energy?
Well, I will actually answer your first question. Getting the budget right is important, and I think there is a straightforward answer to that. The infrastructure that the president talked about is critical. If we're going to get the economy moving forward, we have to improve the quality of our education, the quality of our roads and bridges, of our energy infrastructure, of our IT infrastructure. We're falling behind, and all of that is relatively affordable. But the only way you can make it work is if you do the other stuff that the president talked about. And so as a fiscally conservative Democrat, my concern is to make sure we follow through on that other stuff. The $2 trillion that the president said in his speech last night in programs that he found that we could save money on over the course of the next 10 years. Doing health care reform in a way that actually saves money by getting the exploding inflation in health care under control.
But is that easier said than done?
Oh, absolutely it's easier said than done. But it is the critical part about it. And the credit I will give President Obama is he has not shied away from this. He talked about entitlement reform. He talked about Social Security reform last night. He has put the issues on the table that are necessary to get our budget under control so we can afford to do the infrastructure improvements that we need to do to create those jobs, not just now, but to create a permanent, sustainable economy with broad-based economic benefits, which we haven't had. And as the president pointed out, it's not just in the last 6 months. Even in the last 8 years, we have not had that sort of broad-based prosperity. So that's the critical piece.
Yeah, Congressman Pence, I want to bring you back in the conversation because we heard the president at this top of the hour really issue another warning to Wall Street, saying that regulation is needed, oversight, extreme oversight is needed for some of the investors who could be dangerous to this economy. I'm paraphrasing his words here. Are you concerned that the government will go too far with regulation? How much is needed at this point, especially when so many American people, quite honestly, don't trust what they see on Wall Street?
Well, sure, I think there's got to be responsible regulation. We certainly learned in the banking crisis that there were certain financial instruments that should have been regulated as securities, but I take your point, Cameron, that there is a point of regulation where it becomes antithetical to growth and antithetical to creating jobs. There's another piece here. As the president laid out this ambitious agenda, he also laid out, and we expect to see details in the budget tomorrow, plan to raise taxes on Americans, half of whom file at that level represent small business owners in America filing as individuals. And I got to tell you, House Republicans believe that raising taxes on Americans at any level of this economy, especially small business owners, is antithetical and is the wrong approach during a recession. There's
Congressman
also
Smith,
the
I want
cap
you
and
to jump
trade
in on
plan
this
could
one,
add costs and utilities.
Last night the president made a point of saying, you know, if you make over under $250,000, you won't be taxed. But it's been noted he did not bring up small businesses.
That's the other piece of this that has to be put in place if we're going to get a fiscally responsible government. We have to make sure that we have tax reform, and a big part of it is simply making our tax code less confusing. I mean, there are so many deductions, so many offsets at this point, that the IRS estimates there's $300 billion in taxes that are uncollected every year because of that confusion. Doing tax reform is critical. And yes, as the president confronted it, I think the top tax rate going from 35 to 39%, which is what it was under President Clinton. Remember, there was a point in our history when the top tax rate was 90%. Before Reagan cut taxes, it was 78%. So we're not talking about going way up. We're talking about getting back to a level that can help sustain what needs to be done on infrastructure.
But we really are, Cameron, with respect to Adam, we really are talking about raising taxes, and I have a lot of respect for Adam, is more than half of the Americans who file taxes above that $250,000 level are actually small business owners who are filing as individuals. And so we got to decide whether the best course of action is to raise taxes on small business owners around the country. We ought to be practicing fiscal restraint and stopping the massive government spending that's been underway in the last several weeks.
So I want to thank you both for your time today. Certainly appreciate it. Certainly know also there's a lot more in this discussion. Thank you.